Good morning, everybody. My name is Shalito Habito. Once upon a time, I was the economic planning minister in the Philippines in the 1990s, and I'm now a professor of economics in the Ateneo de Manila University. I think this is a very, very important forum. I was just telling somebody a while ago that government officials come and go, but in the end, it is people in business who really make the ASEAN economic community happen. And so now we're hearing from the heads and representatives of the various business advisory councils in the different ASEAN countries, and I think their perspective on where ASEAN is leading to is in fact somehow going to probably be the more prophetic ones than what we can hear from the other stakeholders. So without further ado, let me just get a quick backgrounder. I think we got a lot from the keynote speaker. She left us with a lot to chew on what it looks like, and of course what it has been like in the ASEAN in the past 50 years. In fact, 25 years ago, when the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement was signed, it was actually a time when people were skeptical whether there was even going to be use in this kind of economic cooperation, the general view being that the economies of ASEAN are competing with one another, so there was little scope for cooperation. Of course, all of those skeptics were proven wrong with what has been accomplished in the last 25 years, and indeed the last 50 years. Of course, the other important thing to consider now as we look ahead is the rapidly changing landscape in the world economy. We're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, we're talking about climate change, we're talking about demographic shifts, some of them very major in certain countries, and I think all of these are shaping what we expect the ASEAN will look like 50 years from now. In any case, what I'd like to do is to give each of our representatives from the different BACs, and too bad we don't have the whole set of 10 represented this morning, but in any case, let me start alphabetically, which is the ASEAN protocol, of course, and ask for maybe initial 3 to 4 minutes of your perspective on, from your point of view, and perhaps in your particular field of interest, what do you think would ASEAN look like in the next 50 years? And you don't have to jump to the 50 years ahead, but talk about how we are moving there. So first, let me call on Sok Piseth from Cambodia to give us his perspectives from the side of Cambodia.
Yes, thank you. I think this morning, former president of the Philippines have been framed in the past 50 years and what we sought in the past 50 years or 35 years, and now we are in the ASEAN 50 years. And then what's next in the next 50 years? I think we have a big picture already. So for us as a private sector, this morning I captured one speech from her that our Prime Minister had mentioned that the perspective of ASEAN in the 50 years is to fulfill the gap of the different nations, the development gap. So for us as a private sector, it's a question how, because we are the one who execute all this. So I can see ASEAN in the future is will be the complement each other. It will be, it's like the full supply chain in the area. For example, if you want to do agricultural business, you cannot do it in Singapore, but you can looking for Cambodia, Laos, or Myanmar, which is we have a lot of land. When you see technology hub, financial hub, of course, Singapore is a good. So I see the ASEAN 50, we're going to fulfill the gap by complement each other. We turn from the conventional thinking as a competitor to be the complementer, to be collaboration in terms of the growth of the region. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, that's exactly how I've been portraying ASEAN lately in my own presentations about it. It's no longer about competition. It's more about complementation because of the regional value chains or regional production networks that characterize trade within ASEAN. Well, at this point, let's hear next from Indonesia, from Anangga Roosdiono, the chair of the Indonesian BAC.
Yes, we are already, ASEAN is already in 50 years. But from point of view of business, actually the first 40 years for us, ASEAN is somewhere up in the clouds, you know. There's a lot of agreements achieved between the governments, but only when 2015, when there's the announcement of ASEAN Economic Community, then everybody started that we are already on the ground. So for the next 50 years, then it's the time for implementations of what ASEAN is, about the community. And we really look hard on that. What we see that connectivity is the most important thing, that we have to be together, and connectivity is important, especially as Indonesia consists of islands, you know, and we have to connect each other within internally, but also externally looking from ASEAN. So what we see in the next 50 years, that we are already connected. There's no competition between, economic competition between each country.
Thank you. And this time let me hear of the point of view of Malaysia. Tan Sri Dr. Muhammad Munir Abdul Majid. Can we hear his perspectives on ASEAN 50 years hence?
Well, first thing to note is that our summit this year, not just the Business and Investment Summit, but also the big ASEAN Summit, has already achieved one very important thing. We have achieved the setting up of AMAN, and this is supposed to continue, right? To make sure we do not leave the smallest companies behind. They are the backbone of the ASEAN economy. If the backbone breaks, there's a problem, as we all know. So it's very good that we have AMAN set up to ensure that the small companies are actually growing and that they succeed. Now, I mentioned the big summit as well. Now, the big summit already has achieved something very important. This is an agreement between China and ASEAN to jointly cooperate to sustain the coastal areas and the deep sea region of the South China Sea. The geopolitics must be right for any economics to take place. And they have agreed on this, and this is a very good plus insofar as this year's 2017 summits are concerned. And therefore, it's very important that this has happened. And I hope people will acknowledge this very important step forward on both the points of our Business and Investment Summit and also of our Leaders Summit that took place yesterday. And I think insofar as businesses are concerned, the propulsion towards the future is through, obviously, the digital economy that is taking place. Therefore, we must use the digital economy also to help the small enterprises gain the access to finance. They can jumpstart and go into the big time, find finance through platforms, e-finance platforms of various types. We had set up my own company that I'm involved in, set up something called the Growth Accelerator Exchange. This is called GAX. It collaborates and is willing to collaborate with anyone in any country to ensure access to finance for small companies through various means, P2P, loan crowdfunding, or equity crowdfunding. And it will provide that platform to ensure that growth. It is also an e-commerce platform, an e-trade platform for trade finance capabilities. So this is one way of using the digital world, the digital age, the digital processes to advance ASEAN into the next 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you, and I believe indeed that is the way to go if we are to bring the so-called lagging members of ASEAN closer and to close the gap, as pointed out at the outset, and indeed bring to implementation, of course, Chair Roosdiono is pointing out as well, all the various initiatives towards this. But really the inclusive ASEAN is the point that has been raised just now, and the digital economy and e-commerce in particular, are very important keys to getting small business to be full participants in the ASEAN community. Well, let's hear from the point of view of a country that is, in fact, seen to be well ahead in this area of the digital economy. Let me call on Dr. Robert Yap, Chair of the Singapore BAC.
Thank you. From ASEAN BAC, I think if you have been following what ASEAN BAC has been doing, I think we have launched 3 legacy projects. Next year we'll launch the 4th one. Right? So the first one is what, when Tan Sri chaired Malaysia, we launched what we call the connectivity in terms of financing. So you have SME financing using the modern fintech way of linking everybody up for efficiency. So there's one main project that we have put. Legacy project is not meant as a project to just do it in the year and finish in the year. It probably will go for many, many years. Right? So the foundation is built for it to scale, to grow, to really see something, right, more concrete. And when Laos chaired 2 years ago, and Laos, Khun Oudet, and all of us actually put forward a project called Laos Connect. It's actually more to connect and ensure that Laos is not landlocked as what it is, to be land linked, right? So Laos itself is right in the center, and we are trying to Mohd an intermodal hub in Laos to connect rest of ASEAN, and ASEAN will connect to China, ASEAN will connect to India, and through ASEAN-China connection, you can actually move up to the European side, to the Roosdiono highway and so on. So these are the kind of projects that we're talking about, and this year actually when Philippines does, along the connectivity line, besides the huge contribution in terms of the AMEN, or the ASEAN Mentorship Network, what happened is that they also launched a project called Marine Connectivity. Marine Connectivity connect up the rest of the site which is actually not connected through the waters. So what happened is that the row-on, row-off vessel is really connecting all the other part where you're talking about Bimiaga session, areas and all that, connecting Philippines with Malaysia and Indonesia. So these are the part that we think is very important, because we spoke earlier on about what we call disparity, right? When I chaired ASEAN about 11 years ago, ASEAN BAC, at that point of time, a lot of questions were posed. How are you going to get together? How are you going to work together? Because you are all in different levels of economic advancement. So how are you going to work together? Because you can't, because there's no way that you can come together on that basis. But we are actually very, very much looking at the part where ASEAN diversity is actually an advantage. Imagine, each of us has got our own value advantages, right? Some of us are strong in finance, some are strong in the people, some are strong in many areas, agriculture and so on. So the diversity, as long as we can work together and not compete directly, but complement, leverage each other for comparative advantages, I think we can be very strong as ASEAN. So that's a point on that basis. So in the next year, what we're going to do, next year we take over the chair, and Singapore will chair that. So one of the areas in terms of the future of ASEAN will be really connectivity, but connectivity in what aspect? I just spoke about the fiscal, which is in the area of goods, and we have all the people connectivity, social and cultural connectivity, and so on. So what I'm looking at in terms of moving forward is that if we can all not look at each other like competitors, we look at each other like brothers, we look at each other as the way that we can share our competitive advantages with our own ASEAN nation. I think that's the kind of a future that will be very positive if we are able to do that. So laying the foundation for that, for example, imagine if all the cities in the next 50 years, for example, are moving towards what we call smart cities, and that's the direction that all of us go. There's a paper tabled earlier on by WEF on terms of the 4th industrial revolution, all right? Playing with IoTs, playing with analytics, playing with drones, flying around, machine learning, automation, and so on. These are things that will proliferate. It's just a matter of in what degree and each country is taking on their own path. But if we are doing a bit more connected and holistically, some countries can lead, some countries can also share, some countries be the first to be able to come up with centers of excellence that all of us can just move. The idea of shared economy is not to do everything our own, right? If we have really advantages in each area, can we do it and share? Can we do it and share? That way, I think we move much faster. If we are doing that, I really cannot try actually to put the future of ASEAN or the vision of ASEAN in the next 50 years. It's going to be fantastic, right? So this is the kind of thing it is in the next 50 years when we actually move. What will ASEAN be? Connected cities, smart cities, they are connected, all right? And the way of data analytics, we know everything and everything about the ASEAN part we can dissect, we can then trade with the rest of the world. I think this is a kind of a vision that I hope that when we work together, we'll be very powerful together as a united ASEAN. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for raising the factor of marine connectivity, by the way, because we in the Philippines, along with Indonesia perhaps, are somewhat detached from the rest of the ASEAN mainland and are in fact at a disadvantage on that. So in the end, physical connectivity still is what will get products to move across different ASEAN member countries. Well, of course, now we go to Thailand, which happens to be the hub of a lot of these regional value chains. I'm thinking of automobiles, for example. Thailand has emerged as a Detroit of ASEAN. And of course, many of us other ASEAN member states are providing the components of the cars that are being assembled in Thailand. So from the point of view of such a hub, maybe we can hear from our ASEAN BAC chair from Thailand, Khun Arin Jira, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for saying that Thailand is a hub. Everybody wants to be a hub, yeah? But if we do it right, we can really be the hub. But let me say this at the outset. This is an unimaginable topic or, title that we're going to be talking about ASEAN in 100. Now, I take responsibility in what I say today about ASEAN at 100. You can come and look for me 50 years from now up there, because I don't think I'll be around, but what I can do is I can do some predictions. I can say something that you might believe or you might not believe. That's up to you. Now, most of you here will not be here also, but your grandchildren, make sure you tell them what I said today. I take responsibility in whatever I say now. I think what's going to happen is that the technological advance, the AI innovation, it's going to create a big digital era around. What's going to happen? The traffic's going to be less, but be careful. You see some drone up there that will come down and crash your head. This is going to happen. Taxi drone, this is what's going to happen, not only around the world, but particularly in Asia. Something like this, I think we have to be very, very careful of. I envision more integrated. I envision that the path towards the next 50 years, they will have some kind of language chip that can be put inside of human brains. So now we don't have to speak different languages. We can speak any language that we will understand by just flipping over to another language. You may be laughing, but you might be able to live to see this. We will see, the last 50 years. Today, we're still seeing a lot of non-tariff barriers, non-tariff measures. The next 50 years, I hope the leaders and the governments can get rid of all these. But don't trust me, don't trust my word for it. It may not happen. Now, if we really want free flow of goods, free flow of services, and investments, and people, we need to be doing something a little bit more concrete. Let me tell you today that after 50 years, we're still talking about helping SMEs. We're still talking about getting rid of NTBs, NTMs. We're still talking about particularly ASEAN single window. When is this going to happen? I think the governments must do something and get this ASEAN single window work by 2025. Now, you want to wait another 50 years, that's up to you, but I think we need something like this fairly quickly. For us to be together as one, I think the leaders have to make firm commitment. The only thing that I'm very happy about, let me just mention that NTMs, NTBs, we've asked the governments to reduce or eliminate long time ago. It's been about 4 or 5 years now. But the last I heard was 2 months ago. The economic ministers came out with an objective to reduce NTMs, NTBs by 10% by 2020. I'm very happy at least they have a goal. So after all these messages, I hope that the next 50 years we'll see prosperity to continue. The key thing in this area is education. Education will remain, and I think we have to be mindful of what we do in creating the knowledge to our population, our human resources. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Well, indeed, the agenda forward, they say that trade liberalization has been largely accomplished, although of course there's a few holdouts still. But indeed, trade facilitation is now the name of the game for ASEAN to move forward. And you mentioned the ASEAN single window, which requires everybody to in fact buy into that and link into that for it to really work. Well, finally, let us hear from the chair of the Vietnam BAC, Dr. Doan Khuong.
Okay, thank you. My name is Khun. I'm from Vietnam. I'm very happy to here with you, with all of you, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of ASEAN. So on this occasion, I would like to share with you on 3 points on how does it look like ASEAN in the future and what kind of perspective of ASEAN in the future. First one is that, as you all we know, we are living in a changing world. We are only changing very fast. And ASEAN, our region, also changing very fast. But we have to understand that, the world, our region, changing fast. But that also generates both challenges and chances. And the point is that, we have to understand the change and understand what kind of challenges we're facing and also what kind of chances we have. Also, the change is that 50 years ago, in Vietnam or in ASEAN, nobody could imagine that Vietnam can join ASEAN. Now, Vietnam, we are a very active member of ASEAN, so it's changed. So the point is that we have to understand the world is changing, the region is changing. It's changing, it's generating both chances and challenges. So the point is that we have to be active to understand that and find out the solution, how to overcome the challenges, and how we can capitalize on the chances we have in today. So it's the first point. And as far as for Vietnam, we are now growing very fast. And as you may know that in the last week, we organized successfully the APEC Summit 2017. And we also organized CEO Summit. And the first time ever in CEO Summit in the APEC region, 2 leaders of the 2 first the world economies, China and America, President of the United States and President of China also addressed the forum. So it means that, if Vietnam now is a very active destination for doing business. So if you have some ideas or business plan in your plan in the future to do with ASEAN, with Vietnam, so don't forget Vietnam, to put Vietnam in your business roadmaps in the future. And now, last point is that, I think that, the future of ASEAN, how does it look like? I think it depends to us. Depends on the governments, depends on people, depends on businesses. Our efforts can make things better. And especially in the policies towards business is very important. So I think that's the point is that how we can deal the business community in ASEAN, especially SME. SME now in ASEAN comprises 97% of all the business community in ASEAN. So the policy towards the SME is a key point to move ASEAN forward, to create more prosperity, to make ASEAN more sustainable. So I think that is the key point. And the launching of AMEN, initiative of ABAC this year, AMEN, the ASEAN Mentorship, Entrepreneurship, Networking is one of the point to move things forward. It's very important. So I think that the future of ASEAN will be depend on us. So the policies to make everyone to go together, you know, and don't leave anyone behind the key point. So with that, I think we believe that in the 15 years to go, I think ASEAN will be more prosperous, and all of us is a very good region. I think it's a model for the world to develop in the future. So the point is that, you know, if you go, he's saying, I love the saying, the one say is that, you know, if you go alone, you can go fast. If we go together, we can go far, is the point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. And indeed, Vietnam, I believe, has shown that closing that gap, the so-called gap that existed between the first ASEAN members and the latter ones, in fact, can be done. And Vietnam is seen by many of us in the Philippines to have already gone ahead of us in many ways in terms of the economic dynamism. But before I open it up to the floor, I was wondering whether any of the panel members wanted to jump in with some further reaction. Yes, please.
I think the main message is business is ready to go, right? We're all ready to go. So we must tell our leaders, government leaders, make sure you do not put barriers in our way as we are ready to go. Make sure you remove non-tariff barriers. You remove regulations which inhibit business progress. At the same time, your responsibility as national leaders is to ensure that the geopolitics is right, that the environment is good for us to go. No barriers, good environment. I think business will go forward in ASEAN. Thank you.
Well, thank you for pointing that out. I believe, as we were talking about government sometimes being an obstacle, I think it's really up to business and entrepreneurs in general to actually push governments to do the right things. And indeed, things like trade facilitation and non-tariff barriers are things that the leaders themselves will work to get out if the business sector pushes them to do that. Are there any other sentiments from the panel? Or we have very limited time left, and I would like to hear also from the general audience. Can I get a show of hands who might want to be posing a question or making a short intervention as well, just to have a sense? Okay, I don't see any right now. Oh, you were supposed to be up here, George. Okay, why don't I give the floor then to our ABAC chair from the Philippines, George Barcelon. Well, why don't...
Anyway, we're talking about 50 years from today. And as Arin clearly pointed out, I guess he won't be around. Okay. But having said that, you know, nowadays a lot of things have been talked about. AI, big data, all the things. But one thing that we have to really look at is, with all of this development, what's the value of a human life? I mean, these advances can take over many of the functions that people are doing now. The population keeps on growing. Will that leave the human, you know, playing a side role? So I think from the ASEAN point of view, yes, we're striving for economic growth. But I think the human values is just as important. And I'd like to share with you that I've thought about this, the 4 H's. Among the countries, our development are not monolithic. Some are way advanced, some are way below. It would be nice for the ASEAN to come together and say, how do we eliminate hunger? Even in the developed countries, during the Magsaysay Award, there was a awardee from Singapore. I forgot his name, but I was so surprised that he got the award because of his work in feeding the poor. And he said there are about 7 to 8% in Singapore who are poor, who can't even afford 3 meals a day. So you can see even in developed countries, you have poor people. You have people that, go hungry. So it'd be nice for ASEAN to look at it and say, how do we solve the problem of hunger within each of the country? Second is health. Health is very important. Again, for more developed countries, health issue is taken care of by a good government. They have a good medical, social welfare. But for the other ASEAN countries that are not as developed, health is an issue. The third H, I call it the 4H. Hunger, health, higher education. We're talking about the digital divide. Yesterday, the theme was, when we had a speaker from the World Economic Forum, he was talking about, this drastic change that is forthcoming, the paradigm shift, the importance of data, the importance of people knowing how to use data in their business, and at the same time, if you look at it, even in education. So higher education is important. We're not among the ASEAN nations. Again, there are some highly advanced, there's some pretty much behind. I would like the ASEAN to look at it and help each other out. How can we help in the higher education? The fourth is well, if you sum it up, the fourth is the happiness index. Money is not everything, but I think happiness is a factor that we have to look at. So hopefully in the next 50 years, we would attain the 4H. We can do away with hunger. We can improve the health of the people. We can have higher education for those who cannot afford. And the fourth is we can have happiness among the ASEAN. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, George Barcelon. Thank you for pointing out, in fact, that in the end, all of this is for us human beings. Our time is running out, but I'll give one very quick intervention to our colleague from Thailand.
I have a question that's really related to what we're doing, and this particular event. Let me just refer a little bit, and then I'll tell you the question. President Trump is with us this time. President Trump has been talking a lot about America first, trading with nations, bilateral, fair trade. He's interested in coming to this region to meet all of us. When he's more interested in the business, my question is, why did he not make time to meet with ASEAN Business Advisory Council here? Who's the chair? That is my question.
Can you say that again?
The
question itself?
The question is, why did Mr. Trump not making an effort? This is not the question, not for me, for everybody, for him too. Why did he not make that effort to meet with ASEAN Business Advisory Council members and chair here in Manila? Because this organization is the apex organization who's helping the leaders of ASEAN to smooth flow the ASEAN economic community. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that rhetorical question, of course. Let me wrap up. Our time is up. I think, very quickly, George, very quickly.
I'll echo what you said. President Trump mentioned that the U.S. is getting the shorter end of globalization. And I said, I disagree. If you go back 50 years ago, U.S. is globalization. All the goods that we had, cars, TV, food, they're the one cornering that market. But you see how 50 years has changed. You're talking about competitiveness. So as we move forward, we're ASEAN plus the other ASEAN countries. We're at the peak. In the next 50 years, may be different.
Thank you.
We may be complaining about globalization. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm being asked to wrap up. Let me just say very quickly that, this has been a very varied and rich conversation that we've been having. Again, the question really is, where is ASEAN heading in the next 50 years? Again, it was pointed out that we are seemingly closing the gaps, which is a good thing. And then I'm talking about the gaps between the more advanced and the less advanced among the members of the ASEAN. We are seeing that happen. A lot of the reasons that is happening is also because small and medium enterprises are able to participate more fully in our economies, both in our domestic and in the regional economy. And third, of course, as we look at the fourth industrial revolution and the dramatic changes that it promises and threatens us, in fact, with, we all have to come together and make sure that we are well equipped and prepared to face all these massive changes that are coming our way. And in the end, as George points out, it is the people who matter. We have to bring back our efforts to the benefit of the people as widely as possible. And here I'm talking about the 630 or so million peoples of ASEAN. Well, thank you very much, our BAC chairs and representatives. It's been a very rich session. Thank you very much all. Good morning.